Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode number 320. Contrary to what I said last week, Larry here.
And Anthony here, and Larry is a bold-faced liar.
Well, yes, I've been had. I've been
You
bamboozled, I think.
well, no. You tried to bamboozle us. You bamboozled our listeners and our watchers and me, unfortunately.
I was on the plane. I was on the plane to Los Angeles, and then I got a call saying, you know what? We need you on the show this week. So I went into the cockpit.
We never need you that badly.
Well, how dare you, sir? And the we's me and you. So that means I would have had to agree with you.
That's right. So just agree with me. We never need you that badly. But then again, I never need me that badly either. So it doesn't matter.
So I had them turn the plane around. And then I'm back here.
That's not even a song.
In Brooklyn. As you can see, I'm in my parents' basement. As we're gearing up actually for WrestleMania party. And forgive me a little bit. I'm on my handheld, so if it shakes a little bit, I'm trying my best to keep this as still as possible. But as I get older, I think some other things are starting to set in, and I think this as much.
I think we just need to get you a little phone stand that you just carry with you.
To be fair, again, I wasn't expecting to do this, so I luckily still had my my selfie stick in the bag from when we went to the Connecticut GamerCon, which I forgot to take out. So it was a happy accident.
Well, there you go. So see it where it works out in the end, which is nice. Well, for one, I'm actually glad you are here this week because I thought it was an interesting topic that we could discuss this week.
Oh, 100%.
And we'll get into that in a few minutes. But also really quickly, I know we talked about it last week, but a happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Yes. The big 4-3. It's it came in like 42. So you know what I mean? It is what it is. And but hopefully now, because when I turned 40, the world was like, you know what? We're not going to do anything for a couple of years because the pandemic hit, obviously.
Right.
So, like, my birthday was literally 2 weeks thereafter. So this is like the first year in my 40s that I actually feel like things are normal enough to be able to celebrate and everything. So,
okay. That's good at least. Yeah. So, I had a couple before we get into what we're going to talk about today. I had a couple of just gaming things to bring up. One, I had mentioned last week that I've been playing the OG Legend of Zelda and that I wanted to get through the second quest. So, and I wanted to get through the second quest without looking anything up online.
Interesting, bold way to go.
A very bold way to go. Also a very foolish way to go if you've never played the second quest, because
very true.
Yeah. But as I was playing through it, I was actually very surprised with how much I remember, which means I think I played more of it than I realized. Because there were certain things, because I had thought I only played like the first 2 or 3 boards, but then I found where level 4 was, which is, if you don't know where it is, honestly, I don't know how you find it without getting help. So I found things that I wasn't expecting to find. I also found that they really went out of their way to make the dungeons harder in the second quest. I think it was level 7 or level 8. I think it's level 8 when you get to it. Every room has almost every room has a secret stairwell that takes you to a different area.
Oh, that was
and so it's batty. It drove me nuts. So, but I'm now at the end of the second quest.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'm at level 9. I completed it all, but I will say this. What I did was I did an addendum to what I had initially said.
Okay.
I didn't look up certain things online until after I completed them. So for example,
I gotcha.
If I got the Triforce through a dungeon, afterwards I would just go back to look up, did I miss anything? Because there was no way for me to know.
That's fair. The game's 40 something, almost
exactly
35 years old.
Right.
So.
And this was like a challenge I did to myself. So I looked up things that I missed along the way, and then I just ran back and grabbed them. So like I missed I missed the magic book in level 4. So after I finished level 8, I went back and grabbed it. Because it makes the magic wand turn. Which is very helpful. And then I went back and looked for where all the hearts were. The extra hearts were on the overworld map.
Okay.
Because I only remembered where like 2 of them were. Mm-hmm. So I just went back and kind of picked those up too. And now I'm at the entrance of level 9. I just have to work my way through. And I will say this, I didn't use any maps either. I found my way through. I didn't use any maps when I was going through the dungeons the first time. Second time, when I was going for stuff I missed, I would look up what I what I missed. But otherwise, like I got all of the Triforce pieces all on my own. Oh, wow. Which was cool.
That's cool. All right, excellent. Is it it's been forever since I played obviously I've tried the second quest, putting in the name Zelda to get you there. Mm-hmm. Like aren't or at least I guess 5 of the dungeons shaped like the letters spells out Zelda?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, 5 of them spell out Zelda, and then the other 3 have different. Gotcha. 2 of the 3 look like, I always call them a cinnamon roll map, because they kind of start. It's like a long line, and then it kind of goes around like this, almost in a spiral. But it looks like a cinnamon roll to me. So
that makes me hungry now. Okay, cool.
And it makes me miss cinnamon rolls. Yeah, so I'm right at the end of second quest, and the reason why, and I've talked about this the last couple of weeks, the reason why I've been playing the OG Zelda is because I bought the homebrew sequel, Legend of Zelda Outland. So I'm going to start that after I'm done with second quest. All right,
cool. Speaking of homebrews, our friends at Game On had a couple new homebrews, Zelda homebrews.
Oh,
and I don't know much about them, but just one of their names sounds really cool. But it's a homebrew of Zelda 2, so I don't know how good it can be. Oh. But it's called Zelda Winter Solstice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just the name just kind of popped with me. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
All right. Well, it's not Winter Soldier, so it's Zelda Winter Soldier.
No, definitely Solstice.
Oh, that's something. The Marvel Zelda crossover.
Can you imagine? That's the post-credit scene in the movie.
Basically. But yeah, so Zelda's been my main game I've been playing this week. And then also my mom's been visiting me. So we were talking when we were talking last night about Atari.
Okay.
Because she brought up like, oh, I used to play all the Atari games. And I remember when I was a kid, she used to play all the Atari games stuff. And I told her, I said, oh, there's this 50th anniversary that just came out on the Switch. So this morning, I put it on for her. And she was like, and she started playing Asteroids. Because Asteroids was always her game. Mm-hmm. She's sitting there playing Asteroids, and she's like, one more game, and I'm sitting there, and it's Friday. She has to work today, so I'm like, oh yeah, she's like, I'm good until 8:58, and I'm like, okay, 8:55, one more game, 8:57, one more game, 8:59. Oh, so I'm a little late.
Awesome.
So yeah, she played for a good like hour and a half of Asteroids. It was really funny. Yeah, like I was sitting on my computer working on what we were doing for this, and I'm just like, you're gonna be late for work. Oh, it's fine.
That is awesome. Mm-hmm. That is phenomenal. All right, cool, excellent. Well, you're not going to see your Switch for a while then.
No. I'm already. And the other thing she was talking about, she's like, oh, how can I play these at home? And I'm like, well, I was like, yeah. I'm like, I don't think you want to spend $300 on a Switch and then buy the game just so you can play this one thing.
Yeah, no, it's a little tough, but there's ways. I mean, Asteroids is ways to do that easily.
Well, there are like a million Atari consoles you can hook up to your TV. Yep. So I'll guide her in that direction.
Cool. Very cool. All righty. Mm-hmm. Sounds like some cool stuff. Yeah, I really haven't, just gaming wise, really haven't played much of anything. Just got a busy week going on. So it's just one of those weeks.
That's fair.
But with that being said, though, I think we can get into what we're going to talk about today, because definitely a big weekend, at least by the time when this drops, a big weekend had happened. Yep. And it was, but it was WrestleMania weekend besides my birthday.
Yes.
And and of course it's next to Christmas. It's the biggest weekend for me. Yep. And
you stayed. You chose not to go this year. You stayed home.
Yeah, no. I was thinking about going. Trust me, there was bits and pieces, but I ended up not going. I'll go next year. It's in Philadelphia. But this year, stayed home doing an old school WrestleMania party, which last time I did this, the world shut down. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. But this year, the world ends.
yeah, basically. Well, as long as it does on Tuesday after WrestleMania Monday, right before this drops. But so me and Aunt decided to do, and we've talked about this before, but now we're really going to try and solidify it, I guess.
Yeah.
With our top 10 wrestling games, top 10 wrestling video games.
Yeah, and we have been talking about doing like top 10 lists type of stuff. And we haven't done it in a very long time. In fact, like I don't know if we've done it before. I just don't remember when.
Oh, we've done them. It's just look, it's over.
Different kinds. So.
We're falling into the Simpsons situation where we have so many episodes that we might repeat some stuff without realizing it.
Yes, but this time, we're doing our top 10 favorite wrestling games, and the way we're gonna do it, just to lay out how we're gonna run through the list is, one of us is we didn't determine who was gonna go first.
So, we did not. No.
One of us is gonna go for. One of us is gonna go first, and we're gonna alternate, starting with 10 and working our way to 1. However, if the other person has that game on their list at a higher number, we won't discuss the game until we get to that person's higher number. That way we'll talk about each game once, not twice.
Don't mind me, but I'm listening.
Yep. Yeah. And then in addition to our top 10, I know Larry has a couple of honorable mentions. I have a couple of honorable mentions, and we'll talk about those at a certain point on the list. And then we also both have one game that we're putting in the wish we've played category. So there's a game that we each have one wrestling game where we have not played that we wish we did. And obviously there's still time. We can always go buy it. But
this is true. This is very true. Today, I probably have the one I'm thinking of. Don't mind me. I just switched the way I have my phone. It was getting sorry about all that you saw before. While Anthony was talking.
It's stationary, but it
is now.
So let's get into it.
Yes.
We're gonna start with our top 10 favorite wrestling games. You know what? I will go first.
Okay, it's very kind of you.
I just that way it ends on yours.
Oh, I didn't even think of that far ahead. Okay.
Yeah. So if I go first, that means you go last.
Fair enough.
There you go. Although I have a sneaky suspicion. I'm just going to predict this right now. I'm going to predict we both have the same number 1.
You know,
and we'll see what happens.
I feel like it's going to be within a game, just in case, like within a release of each other, just in case.
Okay.
But I have a feeling too.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with my number 10. I'm also going to go out on a limb and say that you probably don't have this one on your list.
Oh.
I think this one was more my game than your game. And so in the 90s, when the PC craze hit home, when everybody was able to buy their own computers and games started to swarm the market. Commodore 64 to me is always like the one that I go back to originally. And I'm not talking about a Commodore 64 game, but in the 90s, there was this PC game, and we've mentioned it on the podcast before. There was this PC game that I purchased online. It was on little 3.5-inch floppy disks. If I remember correctly, I think there were 2. I think it came on 2 floppy disks.
I'm starting to realize what you're talking about. I think there might have been 2. Yeah,
it came on 2 floppy disks. It was a text-based wrestling game, so no graphics whatsoever. It was just all about them telling you what's happening in the match itself. A little bit like a role-playing game or those good old-fashioned text-based games, like if you go back to Zork and stuff like that.
That I would akin it with,
yeah. But it was fully interactive with a whole bunch of different match styles, and you were in control of one of the wrestlers in the match, so you got to choose, what moves you did, and then it would tell you like whose move won out and how the game played out and stuff. And I'm talking about a game called Rampage Wrestling for the PC, played on DOS way back when. It was created by Lance Hafner Games. So I'm assuming Lance Hafner was the guy who made it up. There's not a lot of information of it online except for people posting like, hey, does anybody remember this game?
Yeah, there's really not, because like you said, it's all text. So
yeah, it came out in 1994. So it's a text-based simulation game. But what I loved about it was, again, it was like you kind of got to created your own matches and stuff like that, and just saw how they panned out. But what I remember specifically about the game that I loved, there was a battle royal mode. And battle royals were some of my favorite wrestling matches Always loved them. They were messy. They were just messy and stuff.
Yeah,
but,
that's what it was about. Yeah.
Right. But just being able to control a character in the battle royal, and then you're having the match and all this craziness going on, people getting thrown out left and right and stuff. It was just always fun. I would always get thrown out. My guy that I was in control of would always get thrown out mid-match anyway. But then you still got to watch and see like how the rest of the match played out. It was just a lot of fun. And again, because it was a text-based game, there were a ton of wrestlers in there.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And it allowed you to cross over. So back in the day when, like, you know, WWF, WCW, NWA, New Japan, like all those guys, their own separate entities, they didn't exist in games together. This game allowed me to have matches that would never happen on TV. So just a lot of fun. Spent a lot of hours playing that game, I remember. So that is my number 10.
All right. Boy, you know, I completely forgot about that one and the other one, which really throws my top 10 in a tizzy, but I'm going to add that other one. I'm going to add the other one to an honorable mention now. Okay, so my number 10, and let me know if you have this one, is a game that was kind of, well, I'm just going to say it's WrestleFest.
Okay, that one's on my list.
Okay, so then we will hold off on that one.
We'll hold off on that one
to reminisce.
Okay. Well, now I forgot about how we'll do this now. Since that one's higher on my list, I think we need to go to your number 9.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so then I'm gonna go all the way up. I feel like I'm going.
I have a feeling. I was gonna say I have a feeling I'm gonna be like, nope, that's on my list.
Yeah, no, but which is fine. Don't get me wrong. And just because it's number 10 doesn't mean it's like it's just. How, and I'll explain later. So number 9 is a game on the Super NES, WWE Super WrestleMania.
That did not make my list.
Really interesting.
No.
So for me, Super WrestleMania was the first 16-bit.
You also said the name wrong. You said the name wrong. It was WWF Super WrestleMania.
I don't understand what WWF is. When I go back and I watch the old footage, I hear World Wrestling.
Yeah, I understand that. But for people listening and watching the show, if they want to look up these games later, you want to give them the right titles.
Due to a lawsuit, WWE Super WrestleMania,
WWF Super
World Wrestling
WrestleMania.
You can say World Wrestling Federation. You cannot say WW, but you can say World Wrestling. So anyway, Super WrestleMania.
What if you say WWF?
Dubba. So with Super WrestleMania, to me, that was for me the first 16-bit wrestling game that I played. First 16-bit game that wrestling game that I owned. And after I'm not going to say debacles of some rough World Wrestling Federation 8-bit games, they had a little bit of a rough go on the NES.
They were ugly.
Yeah, they were. But with this one, now you got like the sprites are big. You can see who the wrestlers are.
Yes.
It really was what the Super Nintendo was all about, just bringing these games to the next generation. So that's what I loved about it, because I was able to actually, like, you can really see detail of the wrestlers. And the gameplay, just the way the mechanics played, which lend itself to other games which may or may not be on our lists. And at least for me, and I can probably speak for Anthony as well, a lot of these are probably going to be Nintendo versions, because some of these games also came out on the Genesis, but for me, a lot of this was on the Nintendo versions.
Right.
And that's a whole other discussion, because they had different characters and stuff. But with Super WrestleMania, again, it was just kind of like the first. It had some, I'm not going to say bugs, but it had some tweaks that would get ironed out as the series progressed on Super Nintendo. But just, Undertaker, Hogan, Legion of Doom, just to name a few. Survivor Series mode, which was like the first time.
Yeah, second time.
Oh, that's true. You're right. I'm sorry. Second time. But like first time on the Super Nintendo where it looked good. Played good. And then to this day, I have not found it anywhere online. I cannot find a video that reproduces it. But I will take it to my grave that once with The Undertaker, I used like an Undertaker chokehold on someone who was already prone on the ground. It was not in the instruction booklet. I remember I did it. I was like, awesome. And I could never do it again.
Oh, interesting.
So
You know what I liked about that game too? I liked that the natural disasters were in it because I don't think
Yes.
those two ever made it into a game together outside of that one.
No, Earthquake was in the arcade game, but not Typhoon or even Tugboat for
Yeah.
that matter.
So
But yeah, you're right.
yeah, but it was funny too because Super WrestleMania I think it had like more like a lot of tag teams because it had Money Inc. It had
It
DiBiase
did,
and
yes.
IRS in it,
Yes.
and then it had Legion of Doom.
Well, at that time, were they already tagged? Yeah, I guess they would have been
I think
because
they
when,
were.
yeah, they probably would have already been tagging by then. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did like that game. I mean, I'm pretty sure I own it. I'm pretty sure I still have a
Yeah, I'm
copy of it.
sure.
But I enjoyed that game specifically, like you said, for the Survivor Series mode because I loved the whole elimination factor
Yeah.
of Survivor Series. So that was always fun to play.
And it just played better. And to me, it also showed that wrestling games needed more than two buttons, in my
Yes.
opinion. So,
Yes, they did.
all
They
right.
definitely
So,
did.
yeah,
All
there we
right.
go. Super WrestleMania. Hey, fun fact Erwin R. Scheisser, IRS, shares a birthday with me.
Oh yes, I knew that. I did know that. All right, so my number 9. This is
Okay.
probably higher on your list. I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
surprised this came in as low as it did for me.
Okay.
But my number 9 is WWF SmackDown 2 Know Your Role on
Interesting.
PlayStation 1.
Yeah, no, not on my list.
I'm surprised that's not on your list.
I mean, do you play? Is there a panda in the game? Because it's called WWF.
Yes, there is. He throws it.
Okay,
He hits you with the chair.
that's the only panda in the world I hate.
So that game came out in 2000.
Okay.
And the reason why I put this on my list is there are a couple of reasons. One, it was in the heart of the Attitude Era, which was like one of the most popular eras in wrestling history. Two, we were all like diehard into it at that time, and we used to play this game all the time because it had such a huge roster. And there were a ton of modes they had added to this game that weren't necessarily in earlier games. The control scheme was really good. To me, it was the definitive SmackDown game of the SmackDown series. And just overall, like it hits my list because of all of the time we spent playing it. Like I associate that game with all the time we spent, like the group of us just
interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So it's a more of a nostalgia trip when you go back and play the game. Like when I go back and play the game now, it's a struggle to play through. Like I remember the annoyances of like characters would get up immediately after you knock them down.
Yeah.
And there were definitely a lot of bugs in the game and everything like that. But despite all of that, it was just a lot of fun to play. The season mode, it had a season mode, which was kind of cool. So I remember that stuff. Yeah. So for that reason, it made my list.
All right.
And I'm actually I'm surprised it did not make yours.
Well, no, it didn't.
No, bottom line, it just didn't. And just a fun fact about that game that while I was looking up information on it was that there were 2 wrestlers that were supposed to be in that game that they cut before they released it. One was the Big Show. He was supposed to be in the game, and they cut him from it because they had sent him down to the minors. They sent him down to OVW at the time, so they took him out. And Ken Shamrock was supposed to be in the game, but he left to go
back to UFC, I think,
back to MMA. Yeah. So they were fully completed for the game, but they cut them out. However, there's a glitch in the game. If you play Royal Rumble mode, sometimes they come out.
Really?
Yes.
I own the game, so now I have to try that.
Yeah, you have to try that. And there are Game Shark codes that allow you to access them for other things. But just randomly, like they'll show up in the Royal Rumble, even though that they were locked out of the game.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. All righty. Okay, so then my turn.
What's your number 8?
So my number 8 is a game that's one of only 2 games on this list that's not affiliated with an actual federation. Again, on the Super Nintendo, this would be more of a arcade style. Did you unplug yourself again?
My headphones.
What are you?
This time I did it that way.
Nah.
Sorry.
If we see scissors, if he's holding scissors, he's going to cut the cord next time. So.
So you were saying
It's the third week in a row you've done that.
I know.
My number 8 for the Super NES, Saturday Night Slam Masters.
Saturday Night Slam Masters. You know, it's
Yes.
funny. I had that in my brain and did not make my list.
To me, very arcade style. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the wrestling games, the early ones, you can consider arcade style, but this one to me was like just a pure arcade style. To me, it was fun because it was like an original well, it had to be an original roster. You know, excuse me, original roster with Hagar from Final Fight.
Right.
And to see that crossover kind of sort of, I always thought was interesting
Mm-hmm.
because in Final Fight, we knew that he was a mayor, but a former ex-wrestler, which now is becoming rampant. You know, a lot of wrestlers, both here and in Mexico, definitely getting into the political scene.
Yeah, who knew?
But
Capcom did.
They sure did. They got on it early. And so with Saturday Night Slam Masters, again, you know, it really didn't break the mold because there were some other games like there was that Sume wrestling. I forgot what they called it completely. So this arcade style of wrestling on the Super Nintendo was already there. But again, Saturday Night Slam Masters, probably because it was Capcom, just hit on all levels. You know, again, the gameplay, the controller schematics, you know, how that worked out. Granted, for me, I don't remember as much. Like Hagar is really the only character that stands out to me. But all in all, it definitely has a place in my heart. It's probably, again, one of two non-sanctioned wrestling games that's not World Wrestling Federation or WWE or New Japan or WCW. You know what I mean? So that's what I enjoyed about that one.
All right, cool. I remember there was a really good aerial character in that game because I used to play as him all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I just can't. I mean, forgive me, folks. I'm on my cell phone right now, so I'm a bit limited. I am going off of pure memory, which is getting rougher and rougher as the days go on.
Yeah,
but
no, that's definitely a good game to put on the list.
All right, cool.
All right, so my number 8. This was not a. I don't think this was a very well reviewed game. There were a couple of games that made my list that weren't really reviewed very well.
It's okay.
But yeah, which is fine because it all comes down to enjoyment. But I remember getting this game, and I just really enjoyed everything about it. And I think it was because also I was playing more games by myself at the time, and I thought this one just did everything right for me at the time that it came out. And I'm talking about, this is on the Xbox.
Oh.
And this is WWE Raw 2.
2 specifically.
Raw 2 specifically. Okay.
I do not have this on my list.
It's not on your list. Okay. So what I liked about Raw 2, because they obviously there was a previous version. What I liked about Raw 2 was that it had an N64. The Raw series on the Xbox had an N64 look to it, so
it did, yeah.
So it was familiar. And then the other thing that I liked about this one specifically was they had a season mode, and the season mode in it ran through a 12-month period, I believe. Right? You ran through a 12-month period, and as you went through, you earned points, you unlocked things. There's a Hall of Fame section in the menu of the game, which basically shows you all the stuff you unlock. But what I loved about it the most was that they had cutscenes. And to me, this was one of the first games that actually had cutscenes that would go on. So while you're going through the season, all of a sudden, like, they show you backstage and you're getting jumped by somebody. And that just so that started a feud between the two of you. And what I also liked about it is it was almost like the original Lego games. It was quiet. There was no
I forgot about that.
There was no speech. There was no there was no text explaining things. It was just a scene happened, and you knew you were going into a feud with that person. And I liked the way that worked out because when you look at the games today, sure, they have the voice acting in it, but a majority of it's like with the wrestlers, it's all text-based conversations, and the text it's very general. It doesn't get specific enough so that it applies to your wrestler.
No, I gotcha. I mean, I can only imagine what it would have been like writing for one of these games. It probably would have been hectic.
Yeah, I heard it was pretty torturous for people who did that, and I might know a person or two who did.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Well, you lived in Hollywood, so maybe.
yeah. Look for my name in the credits. So yeah, so that's what I loved about it. And then while I was reading up on it, a couple of other things in there that I thought was cool, but because of the way WWE was at the time, belts in the game were allowed to be won by disqualification,
Oh,
and women in the game could win men's titles.
interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
because at the time on TV, like women were competing.
China, yeah.
Well, China was Stephanie McMahon competed for the WWF title at one point, so like there was some crossover going on. She did. It was a triple threat. I think it was a triple threat match, I believe. It might have been her, Triple H,
probably
her, Triple H, and somebody else. So it was just really, really fun to see that kind of mix up at the time. And again, like if you go back and play it, I think now, especially nowadays, for those who are nostalgic about these, and you go back and you play this one specifically, I think people would enjoy it more than when it first came out and when it got rated, because at the time the SmackDown series was like the de facto wrestling game series. That was when it started. They started churning out a SmackDown game like every year.
Well, that's when it became like, well, I don't know if it that year or shortly thereafter.
Shortly after.
You had the SmackDown versus Raw series, which was like their version of the two.
That was 2006, I think.
Yeah, but they're like heading in that direction. Mm-hmm.
So Raw 2 on the Xbox is my number 8.
All right, excellent.
All right.
My number 7 is again a game in the series at again on Super Nintendo, World Wrestling Federation Royal Rumble.
Ooh, very nice.
Yes. So
did not make my list.
Really?
Yeah.
That is very interesting, actually.
I will explain it later.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So Royal Rumble, basically the sequel to Super WrestleMania, on the Super Nintendo and on Genesis. I do now own a copy on the Genesis. I still haven't played it yet.
Okay.
Again, different rosters, slightly different rosters, but again, I had Super Nintendo. Pardon me. So, of course, Royal Rumble has the Royal Rumble mode, and we've had versions of Battle Royals and versions of Royal Rumbles. But this is like, like the official Royal Rumble. And all right, so I'm going to try this one, and Lord knows I'll probably get it wrong, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm pretty sure the aerial view when the game starts, there's an aerial view of an arena. And I want to say it was like the Knickerbocker Arena, maybe. I wouldn't say Arco. I want to say it was probably the arena that Flair won the Rumble in '92.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I don't know.
I do remember the open with that.
Yeah. So, and then it just had a fun roster. Again, forgive me, I don't have the rosters in front of me. I apologize, but I mean it's wrestling, so
Mr. Perfect was in it, which made me happy. He was one.
Yes, I do remember Perfect was in it. Yes. But really it's more besides that, because at this point, like we're used to now, selecting our favorite characters and our favorite, the games didn't yet, short of like a finishing maneuver, they still didn't have like where if you selected a guy, like you can select Yokozuna or you can select, Bret Hart. And like it's almost like the same attributes for the two of them.
Yes.
It wasn't until later where some of that started to change, like big guys versus little guys and everything like that. But nevertheless, it was just an improvement on Super WrestleMania. Again, the Royal Rumble mode was very fun.
Yeah. And you had guys like just to run through a few of them because I looked it up
on the Super Nintendo version.
The Super Nintendo version, Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart, Undertaker, Yokozuna, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon. But your regulars.
But then it might have been the Arco Arena.
This is also the game where it's like all of these heavy hitters when they were first becoming heavy hitters.
That's true. So,
yeah. It was very, very cool.
I just enjoyed it because again, it was just like that improvement on Super WrestleMania. So it just continued that legacy of World Wrestling Federation games on the Super Nintendo.
Okay. All right. And I can't argue that either. It was a fun game. I own both versions.
Okay.
I do. I remember The Genesis one had Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yes, I do remember that.
Super
Might have
Nintendo's
had Hogan too, but I don't think so because Hogan's already gone.
No, I think it did have Hogan. It
came out. Hogan was on his way back.
It came out in '93.
So it was WrestleMania 9.
Right. So I think Hogan and Duggan, I think, made it into the Genesis version.
I think so too. Yeah.
So, So okay. So my number 7.
Well, hold on. You want to answer that now or later about why Royal Rumble didn't make your list? Because for you love the Royal Rumble.
I love the Royal Rumble, but I will save it.
Okay.
I'll save the explanation for later.
Fair enough. No problem.
All right. Jumping to my number 7.
Yes.
So again, this came out in the 2000s. It was on the PS2 and the Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
This was around the time when I thought wrestling on TV was getting a little too, I don't know what's the term.
Hokey?
Not hokey might have been the word, but just a little too much. It was just getting a little too much. It's basically when everybody started acting the same to me on TV. Where it's like, oh, let's get rid of all the gimmicks, and now everybody walks out, and everybody's
like the reality. It started going reality.
Yeah, it started to go real reality and stuff like that. So, so on TV, it's when I first started to lose interest.
Mm-hmm.
And out comes this series on PS2 and Xbox and GameCube originally, where I got to play as a bunch of my favorite wrestlers from the 80s and 90s. All together in one game.
Yes.
The series was called Legends of Wrestling.
Great series. Not on my list.
No, I'm surprised. I thought one of them would make your list, but
reason for it, which I'll explain in a minute. But go ahead.
So, and the one that I focused on was Showdown, which was the third one that came out. Showdown, Legends of Wrestling. Okay. And this one,
you're into the sequels.
Yeah, well, I'm into the sequels because what happens is the sequels always build on the original. So
true.
Usually the first one, it's simpler, it's more basic, and then they add to it.
Okay.
So Showdown was the third one in the series. Now, this one actually didn't get a lot of good reviews because it was a buggy game. And I'm not going to lie, it was a buggy game. But what I loved about this game so much was it had the largest roster of legends.
I do remember that. Yes.
That you can play as. And you were able to recreate, and this one also had a mode where they recreated matches from actual history. So in other words, like there was a mode where you picked which match, like they had the matches set up. So it was like you played Macho Man versus Ricky Steamboat from WrestleMania 3. You played Hogan Andre from WrestleMania 3. And they had a whole rundown of those that you got to play. And I thought that was just really clever of them to do, because they had the rights to the wrestlers. Obviously, they couldn't do like the WrestleMania. Yeah. Right, but they would just, but you were still able to do those dream matches that you remember watching as a kid. And then on top of that, again, ultimate crossover stuff. You could have Sting take on the Ultimate Warrior. Sting take on Hulk Hogan, so on and so forth.
Or Sting team with the Warrior again.
Yes, and the other thing I like. Yes, the other thing that I liked about the game too, a couple of other things. One was the way the characters looked. They looked like the old school wrestling figures from the 80s.
They did, yeah. They kind of that series always had like that cartoony over the top look. But you're right, they did kind of switch it a little bit for 30.
And there was a nostalgia trip on that front. And then the other thing too was this was the first game that I remember. It might be the first game we had at the time, or that was able to do this. It was the first game that ever had a Survivor Series mode where you had I think you did 4-on-4, but unlike the previous Super Nintendo games that had it, where you had to press select to switch the character, you had the other three guys on the apron.
Yeah,
that you could tag. And just that in and of itself to me was so revolutionary at that time.
I agree.
And again, and then I was just recreating classic Survivor Series matches. And I was just having a blast doing all of that. It was just so much fun. It also had, I think, it had a create a wrestler mode, I think, too. So so you were able to do that. It had terrible commentary. It actually had audio commentary, but even though it was bad, it was Bobby Heenan, it was Tony Schiavone and Larry Zbyszko, which was just fun. So for all of its faults, there was just enough in the game that kept me going back to play it over and over again.
That's fair.
So that's why Showdown Legends of Wrestling makes my list.
Yeah, no, I got
Jimmy Hart also recorded an original song for the game.
Oh, that I didn't, or at least I forgot about. Maybe I didn't realize it. Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
No, I got. Well, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, Legends. It was very close to making my list.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like, the only thing I remember about, I'll talk about it now real quick. The only thing I remember about Legends, I mentioned it before, is how Acclaim, right? I think it was Acclaim that put it out. Yeah,
I think
Acclaim
so.
came to my college. I went to Adelphi on Long Island. And they were there. I remember going into the university center, probably getting ready to get some lunch or something, or go to work. And they just had this thing set up where they were handing out flyers. I can't even think of what it's called. Basically, like, they had a list survey. There we go. They were handing out a survey. And they just had a ton of wrestlers, and they were just like, if we made a game, if you were able to make a game of wrestlers, who would you want? And you had like a top 10 out of like 40 or 50.
Okay.
And I remember seeing these names. I'm like, some of which I think were still signed by WWE at the time. And I'm like, this is interesting. Like, where is this going to go? And in my head, I'm like, they'll never get away with this. Or at least they won't be able to get enough big names to get away with it. Boy, was I wrong. So I filled out the list. I handed it to them. And that's actually, on a side note, they're like, all right, well, here's a free game for your time. And that's when I got a copy of Burnout. And that's where I fell in love with that series.
Burnout's a great game.
Yes, so that's where I got that. And also, not the first time they showed up. I forgot there was another game they came to do a survey on and ended up getting like a couple of Game Boy games out of it.
Oh, that's really cool.
So, yeah, so Legends of Wrestling as a moment, but, other games kind of beat it out.
Okay.
All right, so number six on my list.
Okay.
WWE Raw.
Hold off on that one. I have that higher on my list.
Are you sure? Because this is WWE Raw, not WWE Raw.
Which Raw are you talking about?
I'm talking about WWE Raw.
On which system?
Maybe you would know it as World Wrestling Federation Raw on the Super Nintendo.
Yes. Okay. This one is higher on my list.
Oh, okay.
So we'll jump to my number 6.
But I will say, as a fun fact, WWE Raw on Xbox was fun because it was the first game where you're able to put your own original music. You can burn music to the Xbox.
Yes. Oh,
for intros.
And that was another reason why I liked Raw.
Yes.
Even Raw and Raw 2.
No, and Raw 2 did it as well.
Yeah. In fact, I wish if I still had my original Xbox.
Oh, you might.
I'm sure, or it may all be on my memory card still for my Xbox.
Well, the music might have been burned to the hard drive though.
Oh, true. Yeah, because I remember I had a field day with that.
Oh, you loved creating wrestlers in all of these games.
Yes,
I remember the hours on it. I mean, hours.
Yes.
Are we up to your 6?
We're up to my 6.
All right.
So my number 6. Now we're going all the way back. We're going all the way back to the 80s for the one game on the NES, the one wrestling game on the NES that I absolutely loved. And this is not related to WWF at all. No WCW, none of this stuff.
We might have to hold off on this one.
I am talking about the original pro wrestling for the NES.
All right. Yes, I have that on my list as well, but mine's higher up.
All right. So we're going to hold on that one.
All right.
We'll get back to that. Interesting how our lower half had the lower half of our list, now that we're halfway.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff you put there, I have higher, and then the stuff I put there, you don't have at all.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, and again, not out of hate, just out of the other ones. Just as I'll explain, just had some personal hits to me and stuff like that. But we're halfway through the list right now, and at this point, well, first of all, I mean, we've been talking for a while. I'm sure there's a lot of people screaming at us, going, "How is that even on the list? How do you not have this game on the list so far?"
Yep.
So where can our listeners and our watchers chime in and just rip our lists apart?
You guys can chime in on Facebook.com/RetroGamersPodcast, on Instagram @RetroGamersPodcast, on Twitter @RetroGamersPod. You can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube @RetroGamersPodcast, and you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com. And when you visit, make sure you like and subscribe as well.
Thumbs up, like, subscribe, like Anthony said, share with the world. Yep. Share us in those wrestling groups you're in, going, hey, look at these guys. They know what a wrestling game is all about.
Yes.
So at this point, though, just to kind of detour for a second,
Yep.
Because I have a game here that I it's more like a I wish I played. And there's a ton of them, but I got one in particular. I don't know if you happen to have like, is there a game or two that you just never played that you wish you have?
Yes, no, I have one on my wish I played list. We mentioned it earlier.
Oh, I don't remember that. Okay.
No, we mentioned we were going to bring it up. So
I don't remember.
So this is a perfect time. We're halfway through the list. Larry, what is the one wrestling game you wish you played?
And when it came out, I probably wanted to play it for a completely different reason than why I have it on my list. But I heard it just seems interesting. Rumble Roses, which was and even Rumble Roses XX. Both were Microsoft, both on Xbox 360. And what was interesting about it, very Japanese oriented, not affiliated with anyone. Don't get me wrong, not like with Stardom or anything like that, or Shimmer, but it's all female wrestling game. And now, again, at the time when they came out, like I said, I probably wanted it for a completely different reason, kind of like Dead or Alive beach volleyball. But as nowadays, as time went on, I'm not going to go into the history of it, but for those listening who know wrestling, women's wrestling in Japan has been big for a long, long time.
Yes,
not like what we had for a while. I mean, for a while we had some tough stuff. Again, it was signs of the times. Not going to get into it, but they were what they were, and they were fine then. But what we have now, like, is actual women wrestling. And now I want to play Rumble Roses just for that fact, just to have a fun time with another roster, or in this case, non-related roster. And just to, check it out and just have a good time with it. So, and I know I think I can buy it. I think one of them is still available, that like it was a backwards compatible on the Xbox. So, and it's not, when I say haven't played, it's not like I can't get my hands on it, just never got around to it.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
So Rumble Roses is mine.
Okay. So mine is actually an N64 game.
Okay.
N64 game. And it's related to a game we actually got a US release for, but there's a reason why I wanted to play the Japanese release. This one is Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 for the N64. And basically what this game was, it was the Japanese version of WCW NWO Revenge.
Yes.
But the difference between the two was because if you remember in Revenge, there were WCW wrestlers, NWO wrestlers, and then a bunch of no names.
Yes.
But in the Japanese version, they actually give those no name wrestlers their real names because they were real wrestlers in Japan. So I've always wanted to get a copy of that game to play it with the actual Japanese wrestlers with their names on it. I know it's not much of a difference.
No, it's something. It's definitely something.
Yeah, but it's definitely a change. It's a little bit of a change, and it's more authentic to me. And I like when things are more authentic. So that's the one that made my list for Wish I Played.
I agree. And some WCW games did have some Japanese wrestlers.
Yep.
Even some of the lesser known, like, this past weekend, Great Muta went into the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And to wrestling fans, we know, a lot of people know Muta. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of wrestlers, Japanese wrestlers, to give their due. So I agree with you on that one. So very, very cool. All right, I think we'll head back here to our list. We got our top 5 now. These are going to be the heavy hitters.
Yes.
Who do we leave off with? Is it my turn?
It is your turn, because my number 6 you have on your list somewhere.
Sure, I trust you. All right, here we go. So my number 5 is a definitive game that is high on my list, also because it's what got me into the PlayStation, and I'm talking about the first I'm trying to think of the time frame. World Wrestling Federation SmackDown. Because God help me.
Oh, the original SmackDown.
Yes, the original SmackDown. Was this the original? Oh, no, you said only 2 was on your list, right?
Only 2 was on my list.
Okay. So for me, I remember it vividly. I'm in college, so I'm already in college. I'm in the dorms. I'm probably playing N64 and everything like that. Everyone's talking about this thing called You're talking about thing called PlayStation. I've gone to your house, because you definitely got PlayStation before I did.
And at this point, you were still the Nintendo snob.
No, I had Genesis systems.
Oh, you gave in?
Genesis.
You gave in and got the Genesis at that time?
I had Genesis for a while. I mean, not day one, but definitely for a while.
Right.
So anyway, I'm in college, and I'm like, CDs, blah, blah, blah. I don't want, I just wasn't interested in the PlayStation. And lo and behold,
CD-based games, that's not the future.
I okay, I have to just a quick divergence. I'm not going to make it long. So no, lately on YouTube, I've been watching I've been watching a lot of training videos that people put up from like the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking like I watched one from Pizza Hut, which apparently back in the late 80s, they threw out 3/4 of their food. Like if this is sitting out for 31 minutes, throw it away. If it doesn't meet the standard, throw it away. And even
That's
the girl
crazy.
in the training video goes, "We just throw it away," and they're like, "Yep, we just throw it away." But also, what I was watching is some Nintendo training videos for people who would apparently work in the stores just for the holiday season to promote whatever game was coming out that holiday.
Oh, okay.
So they were paid by Nintendo, but they worked in like Macy's or whatever, where the kiosks were.
Right.
And they would be like, well, here's how you sell the games. And it was around the time when their competitor was PlayStation. No, I'm sorry, Sega CD, when the Sega CD came out. And they would go, literally their argument was well, it might have better graphics, but the load times are way longer than a cartridge. Wouldn't you want to get into your game a lot quicker?
Yep.
I was like, for the mid 90s or early 90s, that's an interesting argument point. So be that as it may. I didn't have a PlayStation. I wasn't interested in PlayStation. I was happy with Nintendo. I didn't think Sony was going to make it in the market, admittedly. But then SmackDown came out. So I'm like, well, I have to have this game. And there's only one way to play it. So I remember just going to Electronics Boutique. And I remember buying a used, because I was in college. So I didn't have that much money.
Right.
A used place. So my first used system and my first PlayStation was used.
Wow.
And then, of course, got my hands on SmackDown, and the rest is history. The game was phenomenal. I mean, with those type of graphics now, we're going to CD-based graphics. We're going to real music.
Yep.
We're going to, yes, nowadays the graphics are pretty rough to see, but it was a different ball game back then.
Yeah, at the time.
Again, all this is at the time. I get
it. When we did the jump from 16-bit to 32 and 64, it made a big difference.
Totally. But yeah, so this game actually ended up making me buy an entire system, which ended up now I'm in love with an entire new system with the PlayStation. Nice. So that's why SmackDown for me more got me into PlayStation, but at the same time was just a very fun game. And we played the heck out of it in college. We definitely, it was only 2 players for us. I didn't have any multi-taps, but we definitely got our fair share of gameplay on that one.
Very cool. All right. Very good, number 5.
Yep.
All right, so my number 5. This one actually wound up higher on my list than I expected it to. But as I was going through the list, I'm like, you know what? I put a lot of time into this game, more than I realized, because again, this was something that was completely different at the time, and it allowed me to look at a different aspect of gaming in a wrestling game. So this was a PC-based game. Again, purchased it online.
Oh, this is the other one?
Not related to WWF and WCW, but I'm talking about TNM, the wrestling simulator for PC.
This is what I consider the other one.
Yeah, this is the other one. So I got this number 5 on my list. This game,
I forgot about these.
Yeah. So this game what I loved about this one is that you did not play as the characters. Again, this is a text-based game. You did not play as the characters, but you were the booker of your own promotion. So that's what I loved about this. So like you created your own federation, you hired your wrestlers, and then what you did was you created the cards for the shows. And then the matches would play out through text. So you're basically reading what's going on in the match. It gets to a winner. But the other cool thing was it was completely, you managed everything. So like you were able to add intro music for each character. So when the match would start, it's like, all right, here comes Chris Jericho down the aisle. And then the music would play. And then it would get into the matches. And the matches that were listed in the game were basically limitless. And again, at the time when video games couldn't handle matches like war games, or four-corner matches, elimination matches, battle royals, like
not only
everything.
that, but I'm going to throw in like the the Japanese death matches. I remember doing a lot of those in this game. I can't believe I forgot about this game.
Yep. So, and again, this started out as DOS. By the way, this game is now 31 years old. It came out in 1992, the first version of this game. And the other cool thing about this game was they would constantly have updates. You know, the way that you download updates on your games these days? This one would constantly have updates when new wrestlers would come in. They would create them for the game and be like, okay, now you can download these wrestlers into your already established game and you can just fuse them in. Everything about this game was just so much fun. I had a blast. And as you created your federation, wrestlers would have matches and it would rank them so you knew who was like the number one contender. It did all of this crazy stuff. It was so cool. And I played this game ad nauseum. I just absolutely loved it. And now, thanks to the fact that we did this list, I went online to look for it, and I'm like, I wonder. The same way with Rampage. Like Rampage is just this game that people
long gone at this point.
Long gone.
Yeah.
TNM is not only still available.
What?
There's a Windows version of it, and they've had updates as recent as 2021. So, like, if you go to the website, like,
what?
They're showing examples of like Brock Lesnar versus Walter. And I'm like, it's just awesome.
Send me this link.
Yes, because I'm looking at it now and I think I'm going to buy it again.
Absolutely. Wait, is it only Windows?
It has all TNM plugins released since the year 2000 have been Windows applications. So
send it to me anyway.
I will, but just
my gosh.
Yeah. And there's a tournament edition for Windows that came out in 2020.
This was another game on floppies. And this is where I learned a lot about
other companies,
the indies, because the indie scene started to emerge around this time.
Yeah.
Excuse me. A lot of the Japanese wrestling, and again, a lot of those wacky matches. I remember doing like fire coffin matches and piranha matches and all these other like death match. And again, it's all text. So it's just no visuals.
It's all text. It's all text simulation, but it's just fun.
It was so much.
It was so much fun. Nowadays. Good.
I was gonna say, I think there was. I don't remember downloading wrestlers as much as inputting them. Like, I think I manually added some wrestlers.
Oh no! There were export files you were able to download and then just install.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would go to the option. In the game. As like a install export file, you install it, and it's like, okay, these guys are now available.
And what's funny is I never got into any other GM mode. Like, there's always a GM, even though I'm hearing the GM mode in the brand new 2023 game is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm hearing the game itself overall is phenomenal. But anyway, this is like the first, because it was a GM game. You played the Booker at the time.
Yeah.
But I never got into doing that version, like taking that version of like GM mode or whatever in any of the games. Oh my God. If I can get this, I am buying this again.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. The reason why, like, I've played GM mode in the current wrestling game, current wrestling games. I always had fun setting it up.
Yeah.
But then once it came time to have everything play out, what would drive me crazy is that it would take so long. So it's like it would take so long to just play through a show. And then I'm like, okay. When I was playing TNM, like matches, like certain matches would go
zip through. Yeah.
It would zip through. You're like, you can choose how fast you want the screen text to happen. So it's like you can read it really quickly and then move on and stuff. Like, I remember that, but I also remember some matches would take long. Like when I would set up a Royal Rumble in TNM, sometimes I'm sitting there for like 40 minutes watching it play out. But for some odd reason, it was just more exciting to me. I don't know why. Maybe the simplicity of it, but it was fun.
I think that, and I think between the two of us, we both have imaginations that we can pull, like we can read that and we can envision it in our heads. Like, I remember, it's weird. I remember reading it, but I remember seeing it, if that makes any sense.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Totally get it. And again, it was your sandbox. You created the sandbox.
No, you're right.
And that's what was cool about it.
I totally forgot that game. And I'm so happy it's still going today. All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm really happy too. And not only that, but happy that like I can literally download it right now and add it to my not only can I add it to my PC, but I have a Steam Deck. If I can find a way to put this on my Steam Deck, I'm set.
You spend what $1 billion on a Steam Deck, and you're gonna get a text-based game that you can be playing forever on.
Absolutely.
I agree with you.
See, absolutely. Okay, so that was my number
awesome.
5.
All righty. All right, excuse me. My number 4. I forget. Sometimes, so I apologize. I know I'm loud, but usually you see me lean back because I keep thinking there's a microphone in front of me, but it's right here. So, number 4. Now this might be the first one that we're going to talk about where you had it on your list earlier.
Okay.
For me, again, NES black box game, original pro wrestling.
Yep, this was
the NES.
This was my number 6. So go for it.
So for me, it was like you kind of started saying originally, the first game, the first wrestling game that we were introduced to, at least that I was introduced to. I mean, the iconic characters, Starman, who was it? Great Corn Con.
King Corn
Con, excuse me.
King Corn Con from Korea.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The Amazon. Just to name a few.
Giant Panther.
Yep. And just for a game on the NES, it ran so smoothly. And the characters had their own moves.
Yep.
Had their own move sets.
Yep.
And just that's what made it so much fun. And again, it was early on. The one thing I love about this, which I know was replicated in some earlier arcade games before this, but you really never saw thereafter, and I'm shocked that WWE never did this. You saw the cameraman. He did nothing. He had nothing to do. He was just there.
Yep.
You never saw the cameraman again thereafter. So that little bit of it, I always loved.
Yes.
And what I love about pro wrestling as well is it's love how the fan base is, because even up to a few years ago, every now and again on an indie promotion, you might see Starman show up in full regalia.
Yep.
I've yet to see him do that what I think is the greatest move,
the backflip drop kick
in any wrestling game ever. The backflip drop kick. Never seen that in person, but I have seen Starman in person.
Yeah.
And he walks out too, so like stiff, like
yep. Awesome.
So but that's why I love pro wrestling. It's the first, and it to this day it's on the NES. It's on the Nintendo Online. Switch Online. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, no. Definitely. If I remember correctly, this probably was the first wrestling game I ever played. Absolutely loved it. And then again, it made the licensed games that came out on the NES after this. So they just couldn't compare. It was insane. It was insane.
Weird.
Yeah, like the first WWF wrestling game on the NES. Like all you could do was punch and kick. You couldn't do anything. Yeah, you couldn't do anything with it.
It looked weird.
Yeah, this one, like you locked up, you did moves.
Yeah.
It was just so it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And the WWF games on the NES eventually caught up to it, but it took them like 2 or 3 years before they came out with a game that was like halfway decent,
which was like Rage in the Cage, and even that was still not Rage in the Cage, King of the Ring, excuse me. And even that was something, because WrestleMania Challenge just somehow went backwards compared to WrestleMania.
Actually, I think did Steel Cage Challenge come out before King of the Ring?
That's what I wanted to say. Steel Cage Challenge.
Yeah, Steel Cage Challenge. Yeah. The other WrestleMania Challenge had that. The ring was like diamond.
Yeah, it was. I forgot what they call isometric.
Yeah, it was isometric, and it did not work at all. So, but yeah, no, kudos to pro wrestling.
Yes,
like still a game I will always go back to. Also, one of the first games that I immediately noticed, and it's very famous. The when you win the game, the translation typo where a winner is you.
Yes, epic.
Which people still quote to this day.
Yep.
So, all right, very cool to pro wrestling. All right, so
excellent.
So we're gonna go to my number 4.
Okay.
Since I had that at 6. So number 4, it took a while for me to really get to an N64 game on my list, because again, N64 had some really definitively popular wrestling games. So it was hard for me to try and narrow down the ones I wanted to put up here, because I could have very easily put all of them on the list. But I chose this one for my number 4. And the reason why I put it here is because this was the one to me that I think this was the one to me that really defined WCW wrestling games.
Okay.
And so the one I put here is WCW NWO Revenge.
Revenge.
Now,
Okay.
Revenge to me had everything you wanted for a WCW game. It had pretty much every single wrestler in WCW at the time when WCW was at its height. Mm-hmm. It had every mode you can possibly want. It even had, I believe, it had the Royal Rumble mode. It was just called the Battle Royale mode.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the rights to Royal Rumble. The championship modes, the graphics were awesome. The wrestlers would walk out, I believe, to their music, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure. That might have come. No, actually,
that might have been later.
Stand corrected. I think that came later.
Yeah.
But just the game, just all of the choices you had in the game, just made it straight out absolute fun game. And again, at the time when wrestling was huge, 4-player mode.
Oh,
with
God,
us,
yes.
with us as friends, just playing this game, and it took everything World Tour had, WCW and NWO World Tour, and it just built on it.
Agreed.
Absolutely love this game.
If
and
you
also the competition at the time was awful because WWF at the time was doing they were doing the games with Acclaim, Warzone, and whatever the one was after Warzone.
Oh, Attitude, I think.
Attitude, where you did moves by doing like it was like Street Fighter combinations to do
exactly,
and it was so cumbersome and awful. This game, weird. the game mechanics for this, amazing.
So as you notice, I didn't stop you. So which means I did not have this on my list, and again, I'll explain why when I get to another part. Mm-hmm. But you're right. That game really got where we would play it ad nauseum. Mm-hmm. And that's what again, that's what kept us going. And when I say us, meaning me and you as friends, with all of our other friends, with our core group, it was really there. But some of the other games as well. And with that being said, my top 3, spoiler alert, will all be N64 games. Okay. Because now we're getting into not only great gameplay, but the memories that I have, that we have. And that's what I love about these games. Mm-hmm. So my number 3.
Wait. What's your number 4?
My 4 was pro wrestling.
Oh, I thought that was your 5. I'm sorry.
No. That was my 4. Then you did your 4.
Got it.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Wait. Did we do your 5?
Yeah. SmackDown.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little lost.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So my number 3 on the N64, WrestleMania 2000.
Nice. This did not make my list.
Really interesting. So what I enjoyed about WrestleMania 2000, now it was the I forgot if it came out before or after No Mercy. I think it came out before No Mercy.
Before. It predated No Mercy.
Yeah. Okay. So it was the first WW World Wrestling Federation game on the N64.
Yep.
And it took, so basically what we got was, not only did we get the first N64, excuse me, let me rephrase that. It was the first good World Wrestling Federation game on the N64.
Correct.
Because this, we had World Tour, we had Revenge, and now the Aki, or whatever they were called.
Yep. Aki switched over to WWF from WCW, and they just took the engine they built.
And that's all we needed. Mm-hmm. And it ran with it. What was great about this as well, and we can see it because I'm going to give a plug here in a moment for a friend of ours, the Creator Wrestler mode was wild in this game. Mm-hmm. Not only the own Creator Wrestler mode, but you could have edited already created wrestlers and like alter them. And what was fun about it, we had fun with that. We made other wrestlers and everything. And what was fun about that is when you altered one of the created wrestlers, like if you altered Stone Cold Steve Austin to look like somebody else, that character ended up in the opening of the game.
Yes, and that was fun.
They just pulled the sprites. And so again, just the core gameplay. Really, I'm sure there was some things they tweaked from WCW to WWF, World Wrestling Federation, and but I remember it. Again, us.
Yep.
I remember, and I'm not a big fan of Creator Wrestler. I'm really not. Mm-hmm. You were. I mean, you went. I mean, we'd be, and this I remember is like the first game where we would spend hours, literally hours, creating wrestlers.
Yep.
Just having fun with it.
Oh my gosh.
2000.
What I loved about 2000 was It was the first game where I feel like we truly got a serviceable season mode, because that one had where you played week to week at each show, going to a pay-per-view, and then eventually the whole goal was to go all the way to
win
WrestleMania.
The Rumble. Yep.
You had to win the Rumble and go to WrestleMania. If you didn't win the Rumble, you still played to WrestleMania. You weren't in the main event.
It was like a different route. Yeah.
Yeah. You just went, but what I loved about it was a linear format though, where you just went from show to show and how you performed led to certain things. And I loved that mode. It's very simple, but it worked.
Totally. And what's great, again, with the extent of Create a Wrestler mode, a friend of ours, Felix, over at Flexo Productions.
Yep.
He has a currently running series on YouTube. Check him out, Flexo Production. ICC, the Iconic Comedy Championship. I'm probably getting some of that wrong.
Yep.
But he created his own organization.
Yep.
With his characters. So we're talking Fan Man, Vinny from Vinny's, Durag Vince.
Yep.
And of course, Dominican Stone Cold, along with others. And every week he's out matches, and he's created these characters, and he does the commentary over it.
Nice.
Like he lets the computer run and do it. Very funny, I think. Go check it out. Flexo Productions, the ICC. I'm following the championship. It's crazy. Nice. Titles changing hands, crazy. But yeah, so that's what I loved about 2000.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So let's jump to my number 3. So my number 3 was on your list, lower.
Okay. Yes, I was wondering what this was.
Yeah. So my number 3 was Super Nintendo 1994 WWF Raw.
World Wrestling Federation Raw.
And now let me explain to you why really quickly, because I said I was going to save the story. Super WrestleMania and Royal Rumble both preceded this one. So when I was making my list, I was trying to figure out, like, because those games were all so similar to each other, I wanted to pick the one that resonated with me the most and put it on my list.
Fair enough.
It's not that Super WrestleMania and Royal Rumble were bad. I loved both of them. I was like, but this one to me captured everything they did and then added more to it.
Okay.
So that's why this one hit my list. And with this came a story, and that's the other reason why I wanted to save it for here, because this was a game, came out in 1994. I knew I was asking for it for Christmas. This was my game that I wanted for Christmas. And I remember like bugging my mom. I said, this is what I want for Christmas. I can care less about other stuff. I go, this is that you have to get this game, WWF Raw. And at the time, I think it was coming out the first week of December or at the end of November. So like I already knew when it was coming out, and I knew I wanted it for Christmas. And I just remember, badgering my mom where I'm like, did you get it for me? Did you get it for me? Did you get it for me? She's like, no, wait, you got to wait till Christmas, see what happens. And I said, so then I did the thing that no kids are supposed to do. No, I didn't do that. But I went sneaking around because my mom, for some odd reason, with and she didn't wrap the gifts as soon as she bought them, and that was always a folly. So so rifling through a few places, there it is. I find it, and then I go to her and I'm like, hey, I already know you got this. Is me. This is me as a kid or a teenager. It's like, look, I already know you got it for me. I already know you got it for me for Christmas. It's like, I don't want to wait 4 weeks to play it or 3 weeks to play it. I go, can you just give it to me now? I want to play it leading up to Christmas. I know it's going to count as a Christmas gift. I remember the conversation I had with her, because she's like, well, you're going to get all mad at Christmas because, your two sisters are going to get more stuff than you and you're not going to have it. I said, no, I realize that. I go, but why can't I play it for 3 weeks and enjoy it before Christmas? I know it already counts as a Christmas gift. Just let me have it now. And she caved. She said, here. And I said, fine.
I just, you throw it on the table. You're like, look, slam. Yes. What are we going to do about this?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I found the game.
Right. So I got to play it for 3 weeks before I officially got it for Christmas. But you know what? Like, I didn't care when Christmas came because I was already playing the game and I loved it. And I absolutely loved it. And again, the roster was amazing.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
This was probably one of the strongest rosters for their games at the time.
First game with a female.
First game with a female.
Playable
You got
female.
you got Luna Vachon. One of the first, I want to say maybe only game, but I could be wrong, with Brett and Owen Hart in it. I don't know how many games the two of them got to be in together.
Yeah, it's weird.
I think at it. No, wait. You know what?
Had to have been Attitude.
Warzone and Attitude, I think, had them.
Probably had to have.
But those games were so terrible. They were just so terrible. Yeah. So this is the definitive game for me where I got to play as Brett and Owen Hart, pitting them against each other, teaming them up. You had Survivor Series mode. You had Royal Rumble mode. Granted, there were a couple of stinkers in there. If I remember correctly, Crush and Doink were in there. But you did, just to run through it, you had singles matches, tag matches, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble match, Tornado tag.
Yes.
The Raw Endurance match, which was 6-on-1.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
You had the finishing moves. You had the mega moves.
I was just about to mention the mega moves.
The mega moves, which were these crazy moves.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to call them a fatality, but they were just over the top. Yep. Like you had, like Doink had his finishing move, that stunt puller submission, but then he would have a move where he would jump from like one post to the other and back and then drop kick or something. Yeah, it was very weird.
That was I think that might have been was that the 1-2-3 Kid who did that? Because he was in the game.
Maybe. Yeah. That's right. Kid was in there. That's
1-2-3 Kid was in it. On the Game Gear roster, I didn't even know this. On the Game Gear roster, Macho Man was in it. It was the last game he would appear in for 16 years.
That's WWF. Interesting.
Yeah, because the Super Nintendo and the Genesis one had 12 characters. The 32X added Quang.
They sure did.
I bought the 32X.
I know you did.
I bought the 32X from Funtime. No, not Funtime. Funko. From Funko Land.
No, not Funko. Funko Land.
Funko Land. Yeah. Just to play Quang. And then I regretted buying it because I'm like, of all the characters to add, why would you add Quang?
I saw Quang last year at a show.
Yes, you did. But the Game Gear version only had 8 characters, and the exclusives were Macho Man and Crush.
Interesting.
So Crush was not in the Super Nintendo one. My mistake.
No, he wasn't. No,
he
was in
not.
the Royal Rumble.
No,
yeah.
Doink was in it though.
Yes.
But just this game, I think I played so. I spent so much time playing this game.
So
absolutely loved it.
So you told the story about Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I'm starting to think then it came out earlier than that, because how I'm just remembering now. Now, of course, I've told the story over and over again. The reason why this game is low on my list is because of a personal issue that I had with this game coming home from one Anthony's house the very first time I hung out with him.
Oh my God. I've been hearing this forever.
Well, I'm not going to tell that story. I'm not telling that part of the story again, but I'll tell the preceding part is that this game is one of the things that led us to start talking to each other and how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And then we fell in love with the game and everything. That's why I'm thinking the game came out earlier, because I think the reason why I was going over your house was specifically because I had Raw. So I think maybe somehow I had gotten it earlier or
maybe it did come out earlier.
Weaseled my way into getting it earlier.
I have the info right here. No, it came out November 94.
All right. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I just got it early. I don't know.
Did you did you like badger a grandmother to get it for you or something?
I maybe. I'm trying to think, because I feel like that'd be the only reason why I would have brought the game over. Then, like, why bring the game if you have a copy of it?
Correct.
Because it's not like we were worried about like season modes or anything.
Right.
And then other things happened. But no, but this game always will be near and dear to my heart for us. Yep. Like I said, a lot of these games, especially in the top list for me, are personal as well. So that's cool. That's that there.
Do you remember? I don't remember this about the game. I'm just looking it up on Wikipedia really quickly. I knew that the referees changed in the game, but did you know that the commentators changed?
No. So, I didn't know the referees changed.
Yeah, I knew the referees changed, but the commentators alternate between the team of Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler, and then the other team of Gorilla Monsoon and Stephanie Wyand.
Stephanie Wyand? I don't remember her at all being in that game.
Apparently she's a commentator with Gorilla Monsoon in the game, like now, just sitting ringside.
No, I know, yeah.
But I gotta go look at that. I gotta look at that.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if she got thrown in the game because this was when the Bobby Heenan fallout happened and he left. And
maybe. I don't know.
But anyway,
interesting.
Yeah, WWF Raw is my number 3.
All righty, my number 2. is a game I picked because for me it was really the first wrestling game on the N64 that I quite enjoyed. This was going to be WCW NWO World Tour.
Very good game. Did not make my list.
As much as Revenge perfected it,
yep.
Again, World Tour started it. And again, it was like that the first NWO, like seeing like NWO taking over everything. They were taking over Nitro. They were taking over WCW's pay-per-view. And now they're taking over WCW video games. You know, and like for like the last bit of kayfabe that was still in me, or you know, where like I always let myself hold on to that last bit of like not knowing where the curtain was pulled between fantasy and reality with wrestling. You know, it's like, oh, the NWO is now trying to take over the gaming situation. And that I kept to myself. But WCW NWO World Tour, though, just because it kind of like you can keep going back. Before that was WCW Nitro on WCW, which was a great game. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't like, because at the time I didn't like the controller of the PlayStation. I'm pretty much sure Nitro came out before the dual analog stick.
Nitro, maybe. Yes, so, I think you might be right.
So I didn't like the analog, the controller. The N64 controller almost fit, and I felt like was almost designed for these wrestling games. Now, granted, yes, I know we still use the directional pad, but the analog stick was very easy to get to for taunts and power-ups and everything. Be that as it may, with that, the roster was very cool because again, you got WCW and NWO, you got a heel Hogan. And it was again the first for us, where we started with the multiplaying of the games with me, you, our friend Anthony Chu's been on the podcast before, and you shall not be named. You know, with the four of us, you know, playing these games hours into the morning, but when the sun was rising, we were still playing this. So that's why World Tour definitely will stick near and dear to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally understand that. Obviously I was one of the people who was there.
Yeah, so, of course.
And I can't argue that how impactful that game was for us. So very good choice. All right, so my number 2 showed up on your list, but all the way down at number 10, which was surprising.
Oh, this is where you had it.
Yes.
Well, again, it was only 10 because I really couldn't get to it as often.
No. Totally get it. But the reason why this one showed up at number 2 for me is because if I were to, like, if you just asked me flat out memories of wrestling games, right? Aside from the ones that we played together, this one instantly pops into my head. Always. Absolutely loved it. It ate a lot of quarters.
Oh, yeah.
Also, the fact that we weren't able to play it at home made it that much more enticing because you had to go find it somewhere. And I'm talking about 1991's WWF WrestleFest.
Yes.
This game to me was the definitive wrestling game of our childhood that we never were able to get our hands on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Even until today, you really like, unless you download like an emulator and a ROM or something like that. It's like, you can't get this. And WWE, for some odd reason, maybe it's a rights issue, I don't know, but they've never released it.
It does boil down to rights. When you look at some of these, who has the rights to the arcade versus home consoles and everything, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy. But be that as it may, I remember really only like 2 spots having WrestleFest, and for a little while there was like right around the corner from me, like right on the avenue, the main avenue. There was like out of nowhere one day this pop-up arcade showed up. It's like, oh, this seems pretty cool, and it was there for like 6 months or something. It was weird.
Okay. You know where I used to go play it?
Buddies?
No. Roma Pizza on Avenue U and Bicelli.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, I see.
They had one there, and I used to go there all the time and play it. And then, oddly enough, there was like a Cleaners near there too that at one point had it, and I would go in there and play it.
Okay,
those are the only aside from Buddies, but because Buddies was far away from home,
it was it was.
It was far enough away that I couldn't walk there. Like I can walk 3 blocks to Roma Pizza.
Yep. And
play WrestleFest. And I had a blast. I played it there for like a year.
Oh, forget about it. And And the lineup on there, Hogan, I mean, was a who's who
here
of late 80s and early 90s. I can tell you because I just played it recently.
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah, I can go Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Ted DiBiase, Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, Earthquake, Mr. Perfect, Sergeant Slaughter, Smash, Crush, the Legion of Doom were the tag team champions, and at the time they were the boss. You couldn't play as them.
No,
but they were in the Rumble.
Yeah, I mean, you can play them now like on a MAME emulator, but you're right, and the game. Oh, hello, Snow. What do you know?
I've been taking too long.
What was the Game On Arcade?
We're caught in wire.
There you go. It's one thing to pull the wire out; it's another thing to wrap it around your cat's tail. Is he all right?
Yeah, she's
all right.
Yeah, she's fine.
So we almost had a moment, folks. We almost had a moment.
Well, she's coming right back up anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Do it again. Game On Arcade.
Do it again, Daddy.
Has WrestleFest. So and on free play, thank goodness. So when me and Felix were there, we're like, well, let's run the gambit. You know what I mean? So I was Hogan, he was Warrior. And we just went through. We didn't do the second cycle through after we got through Legion of Doom. But the game's a lot easier when it's unlimited quarters. Just keep pressing that button.
Oh, of course it is.
Because I forgot that when you put a new quarter in the middle of gameplay, it replenished your
health.
Your health.
Yep.
So, but for the life of me, I could not do Hogan's leg drop.
Really?
I just couldn't figure out how to do it. Felix was trying to tell me.
That's fair.
But and another interesting, I mean, I know why, but I always found it fun that it was Smash and Crush, not Axe and Smash. But by that time, Axe was already gone.
Axe was kind of on the way out.
He was on, Now, also funny enough, this was a sequel, and Superstars. It doesn't get as much love as it should, but WrestleFest again was definitive. So
and you know what bugs me about this to this day, when eBay was young, right, way back when eBay was young, and I was in my early 20s. I
remember this.
I remember somebody putting up on eBay the WrestleFest arcade, the whole arcade for purchase for like $300. And I waffled back and forth, and I'm like, well, how am I going to get it? How am I going to get it to my house? And everything like that. To this day, I still regret not picking that up for $300.
Can you imagine having to lug that back and forth with the amount of times you've moved?
It's true. I probably would have been totally worth it. You know, as much as I love my Arcade 1-Up X-Men, and as much as Arcade 1-Up, I really hope you listen to our show because you need to get the rights to WrestleFest and put it out.
So, real quick, they did a version of this did come out a few years ago on iOS and Android. But of course, they modernized the roster. That's the problem. Not only is it just the rights to go from the arcade to the home console, but getting some of the rights, which probably is easy for some, but not for others. Getting the rights for all the wrestlers. So, which might be different now that different people are in charge.
And didn't Retromania Wrestling also kind of copy the WrestleFest style?
A little bit, like you don't have like they're not over the top. You know, like the sprites are different enough.
What about the gameplay?
Oh, you know what it is? Hold on, Technos is the company, I believe.
Technos Japan made WrestleFest. Yes.
So I see where you're going with this. Retromania Wrestling is sort of a pseudo sequel to WrestleFest because they did get Technos to back them.
Got it.
So so it is kind of like a third in the game. In the series, if you want to look at it that way. Obviously, the roster is all independent guys,
of course,
but which is still a fun game to play, actually.
All right,
all righty,
WrestleFest number 2. All right, so we're at our number 1. And but this episode's going longer than I thought. So,
I don't have a timer, so here we go. Before we get to number 1, though, let's just mention some quick honorable mentions because I know our lists were way bigger than 10.
Oh yeah, in fact, I even cut down honorable mentions so I wouldn't get too long with it. So I have 2 honorable mentions. I don't know how many you have.
I can name 2.
Okay.
So mine are Fire Pro Wrestling.
The series?
No, the first one.
Okay.
And Day of Reckoning on the GameCube.
Day of Reckoning was a lot of fun.
So just real quick, Fire Pro was awesome.
One caveat to Day of Reckoning. But we'll
get to that in a second. Fire Pro Wrestling was awesome because it was like the first imported game I played. You got it. You got it imported.
That's on my list too of honorable mentions. Is actually Fire Pro Wrestling G.
This is true.
The Fire Pro Wrestling series is huge.
G has been around forever.
Yeah, G was the one on PlayStation, came out in 1999.
So that's a specific one.
Yes.
And it was just fun because there we actually got crossover characters illegally. And their sprites look like characters. So that's what I love about Fire Pro.
And they also introduced a more realistic style of match where like you actually had to stop and catch your breath before you can go back in and fight the guy. Like you had stamina.
There's a great, again, I'm always talking about Patman QC on YouTube. He does a great breakdown of Fire. Actually, I think it's like 2 or 3 videos of the Fire Pro Wrestling series.
Do you know Fantastic. I actually still have that copy?
That's awesome.
Yep. Awesome. And I'll tell you why. It was the first game. It was the first game I ever ordered because I was working at a video store at the time.
Yep.
It was the first foreign game I ever ordered and purchased. The second one was Busted Groove 2, but the first one was Fire Pro Wrestling G.
Awesome.
And I still have it.
And then my other honorable mention is Day of Reckoning on the GameCube. Reason being, Day of Reckoning went back to like the roots of the N64 games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I loved about it. It was kind of a cool title. Like it was a different title in a weird, because everything was named after a pay-per-view or something. This was like an original game. And
Day of Reckoning was a pay-per-view.
No, it wasn't.
Thought it was.
No.
I'm
Wasn't.
confused.
Not even one of the UK pay-per-views.
I could have sworn it was.
Well, you can look that one up.
I'm looking it up.
With when I'm doing the research, because I forgot how it went. The story mode in Day of Reckoning was interesting. The story mode in Day of Reckoning 2 was ridiculous. Day of Reckoning 2 story mode, was you were on the Raw roster. It was a direct sequel. So
you are correct. It was just a game. I don't know why I thought it was a pay-per-view.
In the first game, you either pick to go to Raw or SmackDown, and then you go to that respective title match. In Day of Reckoning 2, no matter what, it was Raw. You had the title, you lost the title, and then all of a sudden the title was stolen. So now you're trying to find who stole the title. You find out it's like Edge, Randy Orton, and Jericho. You get fired from Raw. You're hired to SmackDown.
Yep.
Stacy Keibler is no longer your love interest. It is. It's convoluted.
It's a wild game. Here was the one thing about the game. I loved the game. One thing that turned me off about it, because you know how much of a fan I am of Royal Rumble modes. In the Royal Rumble mode in that game, if you get eliminated, you don't get to be anybody else.
That did stink, yes.
And that drove me nuts, because it's like, if you especially if you're starting the match, which you are, you have to run the gamut in the whole match.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing that threw me off about the game. Everything else about it, excellent.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with you on that. So very cool. Do you have another? What was your other?
So my other, my other honorable mention. Dropping my straw. And I'm almost pulling out this wire. I gotta get.
What are you doing? Good thing we're getting ready to wrap this up soon.
Yeah. My other honorable mention was WWF Rage in the Cage for Sega CD.
Yeah, it was on my list, but you made me feel bad for having a long one.
No. But, what's funny is that like I had it in my top 10, and then as I was coming up with other games, it kept ticking down. So it ticked its way down to 11. So I
get that.
Yeah, it was the same as the other games on the Super Nintendo stuff. The only couple of differences, of course. It had 20 characters, which at that time was unheard of. More characters than any other game.
Yep.
And there was full motion video.
Yes.
Because it was a CD-based game. The video was awful. You know what I mean? It was pixelated as hell. But just the fact that you got to preview the wrestlers' finishing moves was awesome. You got some characters that didn't show up in other games. You got Rick Martel. You got the Nasty Boys. You got Tatanka. You got Kamala. You got the Head Shrinkers. So like the roster was really Lex Luger was
diverse.
The cage. And you had the Steel Cage. Now we had the Steel Cage and Steel Cage Challenge on the NES, but the fact that you actually had a Steel Cage match in it, absolutely awesome. So again, honorable mention to Rage in the Cage on Sega CD.
Very cool. All right, let's wrap this up then with number one. And I guess maybe
it's no surprise. I told you we would have the same number one.
The Simpsons Wrestling, number one, folks. Greatest game of all time. No.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Backyard Wrestling. Don't try this at home.
Oh my gosh. Please.
No? Not Def Jam Vendetta?
Don't mock Def Jam Vendetta. Our friend Felix, man, he's a huge fan.
No. I'm not knocking. I'm just saying there are a slew of wrestling. There are a slew of wrestling games we can choose.
There definitely are, but I think the one we're going to go
with Micro League Wrestling on Commodore 64.
Going way back, yes. Holy cow!
Yep.
But let's do it. World Wrestling Federation, No Mercy.
WWF No Mercy. No, to this day, majority of wrestling fans
100%
say this is by far the best wrestling game to ever come out and has yet to be copied. Like nobody's ever duplicated. Nobody's duplicated it.
No Mercy.
Yep.
The roster, the gameplay, the different titles you were able to win in that one. That's just and this was No Mercy. I think for us also was the definitive one that we really sunk our teeth into.
Just doing the I remember not like endless ladder matches and like replicating the Hardy Boys and Edge and Christian in their tag team ladder matches and the matches would go on forever.
Oh,
they would just go on forever.
Well, I think there's a reason why.
Yes, but so much fun. The story mode where they had a story mode. They had a story mode for every title. And there were branching storylines.
Oh, now, my gosh.
My one tiny gripe with those branching storylines, this was my one gripe with the game. Everything else I loved about it. My one gripe with it was some of the branching storylines called for you to lose on purpose. And I never liked the fact that I had to lose on purpose to complete the branching tree. But just the fact of you had branching storylines, it just gave it a completely different feel that we've never had before.
Look at Anthony not wanting to do the job. Unbelievable.
No, why would I want to do the job? You know me well enough.
Oh, trust me, I do.
I job for no one.
I remember No Mercy living up to its name because of the story mode.
Yeah.
Because I will never forget having to fight the APA in a 2-on-1 backstage handicap. Was it backstage?
Yep.
No, but it was a handicap match. Probably ended up backstage.
Yep.
And it was wicked.
Yep.
You could not get through that in one shot. Oh my God.
No, I remember playing through that many times and just failing miserably. And then having to go back and do it over and over again because you had to fight. You had to win in order to move on.
Oh, terrible.
Absolutely insane. I'm trying to find
that's what made it
how
fun.
many...
That's what made it fun about it. Don't get me wrong.
I'm trying to find out how many wrestlers were actually in that game. There were like a ton.
There were a ton.
Yeah. And again,
height
of the Attitude Era, everybody you saw on TV was in the game.
Yeah.
And that just made you want to play it more.
You're going to check it in a moment. But I don't know if it was No Mercy or WrestleMania 2000. I think was the first game to also bring back a legend. Andre the Giant was in one of these.
Oh, I don't remember which one.
It might have even been his second time he was in Superstars. But I think he was in No Mercy. And I think that was technically kind of the first time they did Legends.
Really? I don't.
He was in one.
That.
He was definitely in one of them.
I'm remembering it. I'm remembering it vaguely because wasn't there a challenge where you had to?
He might have been the final challenge.
Yes, he was in. He was in No Mercy. No Mercy. 74 characters.
Was it really? Wow,
74 characters. Because remember, there were hidden characters that you had to purchase in the store.
Yes,
you can buy the Godfather's hoe for like $500,000.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. The hoe, yes.
Moolah was in the game. Mae Young was in the game. It was
the McMahons are in the game.
All four McMahons you can play as.
Linda, yeah.
No, Linda was in it.
Yeah,
I
forgot about all that.
It was absolutely crazy.
I think he had all three faces of Foley. All four faces of Foley.
Was Mick Foley in it? Yeah, Mick Foley was in it. Mick Foley was in it as himself. Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe were in it.
The Stooges, they were great.
Yeah, man. You name it, they were in it. It was just absolutely amazing. Amazing game. Just looking at the roster makes me want to go back and play it. And when
which you should be able to soon.
When I get my Poly Mega N64 thing,
that'll be the first one you play.
Oh, no question. No, actually, you know what? It won't be the first one I play. Well, that will be the first one I play when I have everybody over and we do the old school.
I like it.
Ouch fighting.
I like it.
When all three of you would gang up on me because I would win all the time.
Controller is going everywhere. Only one controller would be flying across the room.
I know. I'm a smarter man now. I will only play tag team matches. Somebody has to be my partner.
So there we go. No Mercy, number one, as it should be.
Yep.
And with that, look, for a WrestleMania weekend, we got a WrestleMania size episode.
Yes, we do.
And one final thing I want
to mention. Do I have to split this episode into 2 days?
Night 1 and night 2. Night 1, not as exciting as night 2. Okay. Of course, everyone will be here just for night 1, but it's okay. Still good matches. Nevertheless, I want to throw it out there because the Kickstarter ended, and I officially did back that Ultra Pro Wrestling.
Oh, you did?
On Kickstarter?
Very
I did.
Nice.
Which is an absolute callback to No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000 and World Tour and all that. I only did just to talk about it because as the campaign got near to the end, they started updating some stuff. But I only backed the digital PlayStation or Xbox version. I'm going to go with PlayStation 5. I would have went Switch, but I sent them a message. I don't know if they got back to me. If they got back to me and I missed it, it's my fault. But I asked them, like, hey, look, if you're making this on the Switch, what are the odds that you can do a control scheme with the N64 controller?
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think they got back to me. Or if they did, again, I missed it. I would have switched my pledge. But I'll be happy. I'll get it on PS5. Okay. I'll be happy with that. So, and of course, you'll be able to purchase it later on when it comes out. I did not do the replica belt. I was thinking about it, and they told me how to do it, but I passed.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I'm looking forward to that. So
very cool.
That's where we're at.
Nice. This was a really fun episode. I enjoyed this. You muted yourself.
There we go. I know. I was coughing. Yes, this was an awesome episode. And with that, let's wrap it up. And again, Snow, where can they find us?
Snow wants treats.
Meow, meow, meow.
Meow, meow, meow. Meow, 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 meow. I believe what she's saying is you guys can find us on Facebook.com/RetroGamersPodcast, on Instagram at RetroGamersPodcast, on Twitter at RetroGamersPod. You can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube at RetroGamersPodcast, and you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe and play with rubber bands on my desk.
Oh, here we go. Let's get it out of there then. All right. Well,
we got
next week.
Next week,
stray in real life.
Next week, I have stitches.
All right. Well, folks, we had a wonderful week. And actually, from recording, I'll see you tomorrow. Yes. Otherwise, have a good week.
Have a good week as well.
Hopefully, everyone who watched it enjoyed WrestleMania. You enjoyed this top 10, and we will catch you everywhere. Next week, the three of us on the Retro Gamers Podcast. Whoa.